Captain Forrest here, and in today's video we're going to find out if Superman can defeat the X-Men. This will not be in a gauntlet style. This will literally be Superman pretty much fighting all of the X-Men at once. These members I've personally handpicked, going to be mainly just the OGs, because I was originally going to do like Superman fighting just mutants in general, but that would take way too long. There's probably almost 100 mutants and it would be very tedious and boring to kind of edit and make. There's just way too many mutants in Marvel, and I think it'd be a lot more easier if I just broke it down with the main roster, which consists of Wolverine, Cyclops, Rogue, Storm, Jean, Colossus and Beast. These will be the main X-Men I'll be using. As a bonus round, I will be including the Phoenix Force as well, just to kind of make things more interesting. By the way, if you guys enjoy this type of content and you guys want to see another character face the X-Men, I've got some suggestions from other people in my comment section, such as Asta fighting the X-Men, some other anime characters fighting the X-Men. Please give me your thoughts on the comment section, give me some feedback, and I will try and consider it and see what I can do from there. But anyway, I'm going to talk about Wolverine, Cyclops, Rogue, Storm, Jean, Colossus, Beast and their scaling, and then I'm going to pretty much give my thoughts overall on how Superman would perform against the X-Men. So let's begin. Superman himself has fought Darkseid. This very same Darkseid wielded the anti-life equation in his possession during the fight, and Superman took attacks from him, and Superman also boxed up this Darkseid, which is very impressive. Superman was strong enough to hold up the heavens for a long period of time. Superman was able to endure and take the combined force of full power Apex Lex, Brainiac, Leviathan, and UV Sinestro's attack. When Lex Luthor hijacked and took control of Superman's body, he notes that every step he took, it was shaking realms inside the God Sphere. In Dark Knight's death metal, while Superman was weakened, he casually one-shots a version of Batman who had Darkseid's powers. But what makes this feat even more impressive is that it was heavily implied that Superman would need to be weakened for the anti-life equation to take over his body in the first place. So these feats are very impressive, easily creation level feats. There are some more creation level feats for Superman. So Superman has fought against Lex Luthor, who's stated to be stronger than the entire Dark Army combined, which is very impressive. The World Forger also was able to trap Superman in a galaxy that was stated there was just enough sunlight to basically maintain Superman's normal level of power. But then we literally see Batman move these suns away, which severely weakened Superman. But then we literally see Superman get back to his normal level once he stopped holding back. And he started absorbing more suns, and then he was literally able to just one-shot the World Forger. So that's also another impressive feat. This occurred in the Justice League 2018 run as well, so that's also a legit feat for Superman too. We are all aware, well, I hope we're all aware, there's some people that don't understand that Rebirth Superman is also a combination of like Post-Crisis and New 52. So there's feats that happen in New 52 as well, and in Post-Crisis they also have creation level stuff in there too. So I'm going to mention some things. Now, we've seen in New 52 where New 52 Superman was able to confront the Phantom Stranger, and Superman demonstrates he's able to physically damage Phantom Stranger. Both New 52, Phantom Stranger and Spectre do battle with each other, and if they had basically continued to fight each other, they would have destroyed creation. Superman was able to fight these angel creatures that kill fifth dimensional imps. Superman then devises a plan to open a portal to the fifth dimension so that they can attack the fifth dimensional beings all at once. He then uses himself as a power connector to use the device and takes the energy that gets rid of them, which is also another creation level feat for Superman. And also at the start of Rebirth, Superman was also able to face off against like Doomsday. Superman stops holding back against Doomsday and then literally beats the breakout of Doomsday, literally beats him up very badly. And this very same Doomsday is literally capable of breaking out of the Phantom Zone and is also able to beat up Darkseid too. Now, this is a controversial one, but after doing some more research and going over it with my team, I'm pretty confident, and it's pretty safe to say, with all the feats that Superman has shown, that Superman one-shotting Barbatos is a valid feat, because even though Barbatos was chained up, we can't use that to assume that his power was weaker, and even though he was defenseless, that wouldn't inherently mean his durability would be worse, because if he has feats like scaling to the World Forger, then his durability would at least need to be in that same ballpark. And if Superman himself wasn't in the same ballpark, then he wouldn't have been able to basically affect Barbatos, let alone knock him out. So this feat would further support Superman scaling to the World Forger regardless. And in fact, considering that Superman has already shown creation level feats against characters who are vastly above Barbatos, just makes the feat even more sound. So that's another thing I wanted to throw in too. And lastly, to wrap up AP, Superman's heat vision was able to clash with Great Darkness and Darkseid and his Omega beams, so that's another solid creation level feat right there. Alright, so that's going to round up Superman's AP. I'm going to go ahead and move over to speed, and I'm going to talk about some more about Superman, talk about some hacks, resistances, etc, etc. Superman kept pace with Jay Garrick and Wally West while they were chasing the Reverse Flash to the past. Wally West himself has legit ran to the 853rd century. We've also seen Superman outpace reality blitzing missiles that was sterilizing the continuum, and Superman can move inside the source where there is no direction. So Superman has his heat vision, it can negate intangibility, and it affects people on a molecular level. Superman also can freeze people with his ice breath, and can also create a dust storm with his breath. Superman has enhanced senses and hearing. He is able to hear someone in a crowd of 11 million via hearing their heartbeat. He can also tell what materials you are wearing based off the noise and clothing that it makes, such as knowing 10 was wearing Kevlar. Superman can smell your tears. He also has microscopic vision, being able to see subatomic particles. Superman can also see spirits, so he has spiritual awareness. So that's going to round up those feats for Superman. I'm going to go ahead and move on to his resistances. Superman is able to survive in a cosmic storm which affects you on an atomic level. Superman has survived attacks from Blackrock, who was piercing him on a subatomic level. Superman is able to survive and push on after taking a magical arrow to his soul, which was inducing fear and hopelessness, and Superman was able to pull through. Superman is able to resist Eclipso's mental influence. Superman is protected by invulnerable aura. Superman's willpower helps him resist and adapt to people and hexes. He can push himself with his willpower, and Superman also uses his willpower to power up a Green Lantern beam by 20%. Superman also has his Type 3 and conceptual Type 8 immortality. He can heal from physical injuries, and Superman's story will not allow Superman to die or be in very rough situations. He will continue to come back, and as long as hope exists, Superman will come back. So to add on for more additional resistances, so concepts like weight, distance, temperature, and space-time have largely lost meaning to Superman. Superman literally has resistance against like BFR. Not even Lex Luthor can get rid of him, so things like that won't work on him anymore. Superman and Batman have both shown to resist plot hacks from Mr. Nobody, so both these combatants have really good plot hacks resistances. Superman was never fooled by the illusion that Pariah had put him in the dream worlds, and he's literally able to absorb his own world. Dr. Manhattan states that no matter how many times Superman's existence is attacked or changed, he will survive, and Superman has shown before that he is completely fine against like existence erasure. He has good resistances against conceptual erasure, just due to how fundamental Superman is. Wolverine has shown to physically damage Deadpool. Deadpool himself took a blast from a satellite which was calced at city level. Other characters such as Captain America would scale to this, as Captain America has fought Deadpool and has physically shown to hurt Deadpool in combat, and Wolverine has also done the same. He's been able to damage Captain America as well as Deadpool. Okay, so I've already made an extensive video on Wolverine, so I suggest you check that video out for more details, but I will still go over the basics that Wolverine brings to battle. So as for upgrades, Wolverine's adamantium claws are extremely powerful, and with the upgrades that Marvel has gotten over the years and their cosmology continuously getting bigger and increasing, like the claws have completely been upgraded. The claws are literally ridiculous. Easily they would scale around high Altiversal Plus, Boundless, if not Extraversal. I've gone over the scaling for some of the hero tiers, so pretty much he's been able to slice literally like open and penetrate through like Hulk, Thor and Gladiator's skin and their durability, as those claws literally negate durability. Those claws were able to slice through chains that even Hercules could not escape or break out of, so those claws are pretty serious. Really good durability, negation and potency behind those claws. Now Wolverine's adamantium claws and skeleton can take crazy amounts of punishment, such as taking attacks from Hulk, and Hulk was punching Wolverine to oblivion, and Wolverine's adamantium skeleton wasn't damaged at all except for the tissue and organs in Wolverine's body, and World War Hulk even admits that he cannot kill Wolverine and resorts to knocking out Wolverine. Not even Silver Samurai's Tachyon sword could cut through Wolverine's adamantium, and Silver Samurai's sword negates durability, and it can also cut through virtually anything. His adamantium can also take atomic to subatomic destruction, which is pretty impressive. It literally no-sells it, so atomic and subatomic, you know, destruction to like his adamantium. Wolverine's healing factor is so potent. With just a small piece of his brain left, Wolverine was able to regenerate everything. Wolverine has regenerated from disintegration, so he's taken some pretty potent damage to his body, and as long as his brain is intact, you know, as long as it's not vaporized and completely gone, he will always just regen. And Wolverine is well known for his stubbornness and willpower. Like Namor even talks about Wolverine, like his literal willpower being so indomitable, which ties into his crazy endurance, such as taking a beating from Hulk as mentioned, getting up and literally stopping himself from blacking out when Hulk literally goes bananas and punches Wolverine into next never. Wolverine can even enter the Berserker Rage, which amps his stats by 10 times. It's also stated that it's comparable to Thor's Warrior's Madness, which is the same as the Warrior's Madness amp, which also increases your stats by 10 times. While in the Berserker Rage, Wolverine also reaches the peak of his power and he fights literally on pure instincts, and Wolverine's Berserker state doesn't impede his combat efficiency, as Wolverine can fight under control and maintain focus. So for the physical attack potency portion for Cyclops easily ranges around small city level to city level, plus ranges of attack potency so easily. Cyclops has physically damaged Wolverine. He's also taken hits from Wolverine as well. This very same Wolverine is shown to physically damage Deadpool. Deadpool himself took a blast from a satellite which was calced at city level. So I will leave the calcs on the screen so you guys can see them. So some pretty nice scaling for Cyclops in terms of like the physical department. Now as for the potency behind Cyclops' optic blast, it does range. So from the low to mid frequencies, it can easily reach the city to mountain level regions of attack potency. His lower to mid frequencies can level mountains pretty casually, and he can also power up a city with just his energy from the optic blast, which is pretty impressive. Now as for Cyclops' full powered optic blast, it is shown to have higher scaling and potency in comparison to his weaker beams. So as for low end feats for his full powered optic blast, it was stated to be able to rip a small planet in half. So we've got some planetary scaling at least for his optic blast, his full powered version. Now for his mid to higher end blasts of scaling, it was able to push back and burn Green Skull Hulk's skin. His full powered optic blast can also hurt Classic Hulk. This has also been hinted about his full powered optic blast being able to definitely hang out with the Herald Tears. It's even stated that it could, you know, potentially even rival that of Thor, Hulk, some other characters too, but those are just statements. It all comes down to feats as well, so depends on your interpretation. But I have more things to go over and more feats to cover for the optic blast, the full powered at least. So there's some more showings for his full powered optic blast. It's been shown that he was able to press Jean Grey's PSI barriers, as she even notes that like she was literally using all her strength to keep the barrier up to prevent the full powered optic blast from completely vaporizing her and Wolverine and other characters who she was trying to protect around her barrier. There was another occasion where an avatar of Dormammu got lit up by the full powered optic blast. So overall, his low to mid frequencies of optic blasts can reach at least the city to mountain plus potentially even higher ranges of attack potency, and his full powered optic blast would range from the low ends of planetary ranges to Altiversal plus, high Altiversal plus, to even boundless. Depending on arguments you use and based on what you find more consistent, it could be argued that the full powered optic blast at its absolute peak, I mean like full peak, can even be argued extraversal tears, but obviously that is a very big stretch. Consistently, it's fine to say altiversal. It's definitely like, as the terms I like to use, you know, mid creation level at least. It definitely has the capacity to hurt the heavy hitters when Cyclops is not suppressing the potency behind his optic blast. So that's going to round up optic blast and the potency and the AP portion. I'm going to go ahead and talk about speed. Now as for speed, Cyclops is easily faster than light plus. He can react to Wolverine, who's able to react to Cyclops' optic blast. This feat was calced at 2 times the speed of light. Credits to Hellfire Productions for this calculation. Now there's higher calcs you can use. You can also use the 9 times calc for the speed of light, which was like Spidey tiers, you know, characters who can react to that degree of speed. So you can take it higher in the calculations of the FTL proportion. So regardless of how you slice the FTL scaling and how high you have him in the calcs of the quantification. Regardless, Cyclops is FTL pretty comfortably. He's pretty fast. So that's going to round up the speed. I'm going to go ahead and move on and talk about a bit of Cyclops and how he works in character, his mutant powers, and all that great jazz. So Cyclops, he can control the potency of his optic blast. He can fire at a low frequency, a mild frequency, and a full powered one, which is more amplified and destructive, but it makes him a bit tired. Cyclops can also increase the range and the radius of his optic blast to create a wide spread to tag multiple enemies, and he can perform an area of effect with a full powered optic blast if need be. Cyclops can also use his optic blast as a shield to spread out his optic blast to cancel out two beams that were fired from Grotesque's gem. Cyclops' optic blast can disintegrate objects. It's even stated that he has the range advantage in most situations, as the optic blast can reach around 270 plus meters, which is pretty far. That's very impressive. His blasts can also blind you if you're too close to him. He can also BFR people and objects by blasting the ground, causing the force back from the beam to blast you away. Cyclops can also deflect objects with his optic blast, and it's also been stated by Beast that Cyclops is the master of the optic arts. And Jean notes that the X-Men have perfected their powers, which is very impressive for Cyclops in terms of skill. He's very skilled with his mutant ability. He's an absolute master at it. Cyclops has demonstrated a ton of remarkable accuracy feats and skill with his optic blast, such as ricocheting his opponent's blast to take out his foes. He can also split his beams to pressure and tag multiple opponents. Cyclops is able to skillfully disarm his opponents with his optic blast. He did it to Thor, causing Mjolnir to bounce out of his hand and clap Iron Man in the head. And he's able to literally tag an airborne foe by ricocheting his shot from another person. And even when Magneto reflected the blast from Cyclops, it still tags him. So Cyclops is just that many steps ahead of his opponents, which is very impressive. And Cyclops can also position his optic blast to hit things on a microscopic level, and he can also use his optic blast tactically to get his foes off guard by blasting machine behind Grotesque, which blows up and tags him. Cyclops can also use his optic blast to launch himself away from harm's way, and he can also use his optic blast like telekinesis too. And constantly, Cyclops is improving his optic blast against moving targets per week by 4%. Cyclops can also propel himself from the ground. He's demonstrated really masterful control with his optic blast, and his pinpoint precision is so insane. He was able to precisely shoot through a small crack into the ruby armor, causing it to ricochet and hit the guy wearing it, despite the fact that the ruby armor completely nullifies his optic blast. And even while drunk, Cyclops' accuracy is still on par. It's still good. He's still able to tag a glass ball in the air. Cyclops will target vital areas with his optic blast, so he will target vulnerable areas. He also has info analysis in his own right, which I'll talk more about. Cyclops can also blast a hole in the ground, cause you to fall. He made Juggernaut fall into the ground as well. He's also shown incredible acrobatics along with impressive accuracy skills with optic blast. He also notes that his optic blast gets stronger over the years, so he can use his optic blast for longer. So let's move on to Cyclops' gear. Now, if Cyclops cannot physically activate his visor, Cyclops can activate a button on his glove, which opens up his visor, allowing him to shoot out his optic blast. He also carries some ruby quartz contact lenses in emergencies, and if his visor is stolen or compromised, he also carries a pair of ruby quartz glasses to help control and regulate his optic blast. Cyclops is very smart, very strategic, and very tactical in combat. Cyclops is always analyzing and observing his opponent's power and capabilities, while at the same time calculating and coming up with ways to defeat them in combat. Cyclops also has precognition. He's able to stay a step ahead of a dinosaur, and he can also operate on instincts too. Jean and Wolverine have noted that Cyclops remains calm and stoic and never panics in tough situations. So he's a very strong leader, has great leadership skills, and he's a very competent fighter. Wonder Man allowed Rogue to absorb himself and all his powers into her, giving her access to his powers permanently. I will go over Wonder Man and his feats and showings and abilities which Rogue would now have. So it was noted by Captain America that Wonder Man has the strength of Sentry. This is more so referring to the Sentry back in the World War Hulk event. In fact, this is backed up in the Mighty Avengers issue 6, where we see Wonder Man take a punch from a pissed off Sentry and got up. It was noted by the Challenger that Wonder Man was one of the strongest Avengers out of Dr. Voodoo, Wasp, and other members of his team that were present when Wonder Man approached him to talk. In my Green Scar Hulk vs Unstoppable Colossus video, I go more into detail and give more detail behind the scaling for Green Scar Hulk and his fight with Sentry, and I also go in depth with Sentry 2 and mention his scaling. And I also made a Sentry vs Superboy video. I also include a lot of scaling and AP in that video for Sentry, so please, if you guys would like to get more context behind this scaling, I highly recommend you watch those videos. But long story short, this scaling here would place Wonder Man in the high Hyperversal Plus ranges to Outer Versal ranges of attack power, and this would also mean that Rogue would scale to this since she has all his powers, and this would also go for her absorption powers too, as it was able to absorb Wonder Man in her in the first place just fine. That's going to round up AP for Rogue. As for speed, Rogue should easily have infinite to immeasurable speed. Wonder Man can keep up with Thor in combat. Thor hears a prayer from a universe away. After hearing the prayer, Thor showcases that he's fast enough to cross the universe within a couple minutes. The universes in Marvel are infinitely large, which would mean Thor traveled an infinite distance in a finite amount of time, which is very impressive. As mentioned in other videos, Thor himself can time travel with his raw speed alone, and his Blitz Silver Surfer, who himself can time travel also. You can argue higher scaling for Rogue, you can also get her to irrelevant, but I don't think that's very consistent, so I tend to stick to these levels of speed. So now that's out of the way, let's talk about Rogue and talk about some more of her unique powers and mutant abilities. So when Rogue physically touches a person via skin contact, her mutant powers instantly activate and absorb their opponent's life force. She doesn't just drain the physical life out of her enemies, this affects them on a physical, spiritual, and mental level, as she absorbs their thoughts, memories, skills, genetic, or however may the person's powers were granted to them, traits, personalities, and a piece of their soul, as well as it leaves a small little residue inside of her brain. Her touch can also kill you if she takes too much. Now, depending on how much she takes and when she first takes their power, she can use it for only a limited amount of time, but the more she absorbs, or if she takes everything, the powers will either last longer or she will have them permanently. Rogue over the years has shown to somewhat counteract the flaw of only having a person's powers for a limited amount of time. She can actually manifest a persona and use that store power again. She can even tap into multiple of these personas like a chimera and use multiple powers at once. But sometimes there can be drawbacks, and if her mind becomes overwhelmed and unstable, her powers can activate and switch at random. She's also demonstrated to use her absorption powers to kiss or touch the information out of her opponent in order to gain the advantage in situations too. Now, Rogue has absorbed a lot of powers over the years. This video would probably take me about an hour just by going over all of the powers she's absorbed and what she's demonstrated with them. So to keep things short, she's pretty much absorbed a lot of, if not maybe all of them, but probably not all of them, but I'd say at least 80% in my opinion, and from what I've seen of the X-Men and the other like superhero characters like Hulk, She-Hulk's powers, Captain Marvel, Apocalypse, Wolverine, Cyclops, Phoenix Force, some powerful telepaths like Jean, Psylocke, Charles Xavier. She's also absorbed Captain America. She would also have his powers and skills. She's also absorbed like Magneto's powers too, Sabretooth. She's absorbed a lot of psyches over the years. So she's able to manifest all these unique abilities, so she's very versatile in that department. So depending on the situation, she can definitely utilize these powers and abilities. Rogue actually has some really good combat skills and prowess. She's been taught how to fight by some of the best This would naturally include the likes of Wolverine. He himself is a master at all forms of martial arts. She would naturally have Captain America's skill too, as she was able to absorb his memories and skills, and Captain America is also a master at all forms of martial arts. Now before I go over Storm's attack potency and where she would like stem from and range from in terms of that department, I have to go over some of her feats and some of the chain scaling, and then I will go over where she would range from. So Storm was able to casually block a full powered optic blast from Cyclops. This very same Cyclops is able to physically burn the Hulk's skin with his optic blast. Cyclops has also demonstrated that his optic blast is powerful enough to hold up against a clone of Thor. This clone was also noted to be equal to the real thing. Cyclops himself has been able to physically hurt Thor with his optic blast on a good few occasions. Storm has also demonstrated to affect and bully Savage Hulk with her powers. There was another occasion with the help of Cable with his telekinetic powers and Storm's lightning. They were both able to affect the Hulk, which is very impressive. Storm was also shown with her lightning that is strong enough to combat Phoenix Force Emma Frost, which is very impressive. She was able to combat the fire that Phoenix Force Emma Frost was emitting. This is impressive because this very same Emma Frost, who was amped with the Phoenix Force, and Cyclops as well, they both go on to embarrass a non-suppressed Thor, who was unable to do anything to the Phoenix 5, as they all bodied and embarrassed this same Thor. Thor and Hulk have some impressive feats. We see the God of Thunder shiver the 9 realms during his battle with the World Serpent. This is actually way more impressive than it may appear at first glance. Asgard itself was consistently depicted as being beyond space, time, and dimensions. Not even a quantum cosmologist can understand and comprehend the true nature of what Asgard is. There are numbers greater than infinity. Just like in mathematics, the universe is transfinite, existing infinities higher than other infinities. This is to support universes being far more than just 3 or 4th dimensional in their totality. We also see in this fight with Eric Masterson, who was able to clash with another Thor from the future. Once they realized that they could handle each other's strikes, they stopped pulling their punches on each other. What happens next is very impressive because they produce enough energy which was able to simultaneously affect all planes of reality and stretched across the entire cosmos. We've seen Loki and Odin simultaneously clash and affect all conceivable astral and metaphysical planes. Even Doctor Strange confirms that it is metaphysical, and the narration states it's far beyond the physical. Now as for Hulk himself, he's powerful enough to render Nightmare's realm asunder. Nightmare's world exists beyond the mortal plane, a reality which exists beyond the meager perceptions of time and space of Doctor Strange. His realm is timeless. Everything in his realm is metaphor. Nightmare rules the borderlands between madness and myth. In the crossroads, the shockwave produced when Hulk clashed with Ironclad was so devastating it reverberates along the pathways leading from the crossroads to an infinite number of dimensions, causing cataclysmic unhevels and unimaginable destruction. This feat is easily Altiversal. Now in terms of physical attack potency for Storm, she should easily be around multi-city block plus to town level. We've seen her being able to physically take an attack from Spider-Man, who was suppressed, and this same Spider-Man was able to tank a town level explosion. This is pretty much a low end for him, a suppressed Spider-Man. We've also seen a suppressed Spider-Man easily just beat the absolute brakes out of Deadpool. Deadpool himself has demonstrated multi-city block feats, so right there and there she should easily physically be multi-city block to town level. Okay, so that's going to round up the AP for Storm. I'm going to go ahead and talk about speed. So in terms of speed, she has different ranges. So there's some finite speed scaling of MFTL plus. She also has infinite speed arguments and immeasurable speed scaling as well as a high end. So Storm has been able to react and dodge Mjolnir from Thor. Storm has been able, the infinite speed feat comes from when Thor hears a prayer from a universe away. After hearing the prayer, Thor showcases that he's fast enough to cross this infinite universe within a couple minutes. Now the universes in Marvel Comics are infinitely large, which would mean Thor traveled an infinite distance in a finite amount of time. Now as for the high-end stuff, so in terms of like immeasurable speed, so like Thor himself has been able to blitz Silver Surfer. Silver Surfer himself can literally time travel with his raw speed alone, which is very impressive. So that's going to round up speed. I'm going to go ahead and talk about her mutant powers and her gifts. So Storm has weather manipulation. In fact, she has complete mastery over the weather, and she's also shares a nice little connection to the Earth, which is just pretty impressive. So the Earth itself pretty much communicates with Storm. Her other weather manipulation powers entails an assortment of other abilities, such as being able to create a thunderstorm or bolt of lightning from the sky, or firing lightning bolts from her hands. She can also create fog and icy blizzards and blast it at her opponents. She can create huge tornadoes and hurricanes. She can also change the weather to cause it to rain with torrential downpour, snow, or clear skies. Storm can also use the wind to fly, and also use the wind as a form of telekinesis to grab objects and throw them. Storm can also control the weather with just a thought, and she can also use clairvoyance by expanding her perception and using the energy in the atmosphere to probe and look around places. She can also detect and predict the weather patterns, and she can also like predict people's actions too by seeing the activity in their brains, which gives her an edge in combat. Storm, more or less, is able to discern the weather and the world through energy patterns, and also sees the nervous system inside of a human body via energy pattern. Storm also is able to use the elemental forces to seal up a hole in time and space. Storm can also dispel weather, paranoid people from trying to manipulate the elements and the weather. She can also control the weather on a molecular level, causing the atmosphere to heat up, and can also restrict the air. She can also control the magnetic forces of the Earth and also use it as an EMP to short circuit things. And Storm can also use her environment to her advantage. She's demonstrated that she can use the wind to blast debris and straws from a haystack at great speed, turning small, minuscule objects into sharp, lethal projectiles. Storm also has magnetic manipulation. As we all know, Storm's emotions affect the weather. She's also demonstrated this when she performs a worldwide aurora, which lasted for 4 hours. Storm is able to tap into the Earth's magnetic field and BFR a bunch of zombies off the planet. Storm is able to part the ozone layer and magnetic field to evaporate a huge wave. Storm can also generate a electro field around her and her allies to breathe underwater. Storm also controls all the elements of the storm, as she can also detect if the weather is moving abnormally. Storm can suck the air out of her foes' lungs, which is pretty impressive, so like a vacuum, suffocate them. Storm also states she doesn't need to use her hands to use her powers. She can use her powers in nasty ways. She can turn up the air pressure, pop her opponent's eardrums, or generate nasty winds. With her weather manipulation, Storm was able to affect the core of an entire galaxy. And Storm can also freeze your heart and shatter your veins with her powers. It's also been noted that Storm is an Omega level mutant, and for those who are unaware of like the rankings in like X-Men, in like Marvel, when you are an Omega level mutant, that means you're like top tier. That means you're like a very powerful character. So that's like A tier, maybe even S tier. Storm can like summon a lightning ball that acts like a magnet to draw in multiple knives that were thrown at her. If you try to flee, Storm can use the wind around you to suck you up inside a tornado. Storm can also instinctively activate her mutant powers, such as summoning a wind to protect her from falling. Storm can conjure fog. Storm's fog doesn't just blind the opponent, it also messes up and disrupts the radio frequencies by ionizing the fog, which completely negs sensory. And as mentioned before, Storm can use the surroundings to her advantage, so she's been able to literally use like lightning against opponents who are pretty much drenched and wet, so using water as a conduct for her lightning, which is pretty impressive. So that's going to round up Storm. I'm going to go ahead and talk about her resistances. So Jean cannot fully enter or pick up pleasure centers while telepathically communicating with Storm thanks to the static in Storm's brain. Charles states it's hard to keep telepathic contact with Storm, and her lightning was also giving Charles Xavier a nasty feedback and causing him pain. Storm was able to resist Emma Frost's empathy manipulation and smites her with lightning. This is all very impressive because this very same Charles is able to put the Phoenix Five, including the Avengers, to sleep. Emma Frost has shown on more than one occasion to fight off Phoenix Force amped Cuckoos. This is also impressive since Celeste, a member of the Cuckoos, on her own was able to resist and block out the Phoenix Force's influence, save her sisters. And we've also seen Emma Frost being able to block out Charles Xavier too, which is very impressive. Like the telepaths like Jean, Emma Frost and Charles Xavier, they're all like Omega level mutants, which just goes to show how powerful they are in the telepathic department. At her absolute best with her spiritual strength, Strange himself states that only he and Aurora had the strength of spirit to hold the essence of eternity, displaying that she has some sort of soul resistance and soul manipulation. She's able to channel and use her own spiritual strength and power. Storm has incredible willpower and pain tolerance. After she was stabbed, she was able to still fight with this injury and fight off and beat the living breaks out of a group of women while she was injured and bleeding out, which just goes to show that Aurora has really impressive willpower and grit in combat. Now I'm going to go ahead, move on, talk about Storm's skill. So Storm has demonstrated great tactics and the use of her surroundings. A powerless Storm was skilled enough to avoid and get past and defeat Cyclops in battle for leadership. This is impressive since Cyclops is a master of the optic arts, and Jean herself notes that the X-Men have perfected their mutant powers. Storm has scrapped with Shuri in hand-to-hand combat. Storm has embarrassed 2 Dora Milaje in skill. These very same Dora Milaje can press the Black Widow, which is very impressive because Black Widow herself noted in a guidebook that she's the master at several martial arts such as karate, judo, aikido, savate, various styles of kung fu, boxing and combat gymnastics. Black Widow has swapped hands with Taskmaster, who's pretty much mastered every fighting style in the world. Storm has sparred with Wolverine and was able to outskill him in combat. Wolverine himself is a master of all forms of martial arts. Storm even mentions her victory over another mutant called Callisto, who is a master at all forms of martial arts and is a gifted tactician and leader. Storm was able to fight decently well against Callisto, who can instinctively analyze the structure of a fight and understand to break down different ways to take victory. Greatly known for her mutant power, which is telekinesis. In fact, she did not originally have telepathic powers. It was Charles Xavier that gifted her some of his telepathic powers to her during the classic days in Uncanny X-Men. With those powers, she goes on to perform many feats with her mutant gifts. In fact, it's noted that Jean Grey, alongside with Emma Frost, are noted to be premier telepaths, which is very impressive. So Jean actually goes on to demonstrate a lot of impressive feats. For example, Jean was able to telepathically bully and embarrass Nightmare and send him on his way. Jean enters Null's symbiote hive mind and communicates with Dylan, undetected. Later on, Jean attacks Null, a universal level threat and master of the God Hive mind, telepathically causing him to scream and grab his head in pain, and then proceeds to ransack his mind and finds weaknesses, with Null being unable to stop her, which is absolutely insane. Jean channels the pain of the people all over the world caused by Life Seed Nate and floods his mind with it, overwhelming him and causing him agony, making him beg for her to stop. This is impressive considering besides Jean Grey, Nate is the strongest telepath in existence. Jean was able to mentally hammer through Exodus's defenses, a powerful telepath who can swap with Charles. Jean was able to get through Storm's mind. This is impressive because even the likes of Charles Xavier finds it very painful and receives a nasty feedback every time he tries to communicate with Storm on a telepathic level. Jean teaches Quentin Quire and Phoebe Cuckoo how to navigate the dreamscape, an astral plane that connects to everyone in the world's dreams when they are unconscious, and fight on it. Jean has used illusions and her astral form to fight Rutal, while at the same time absorbing the brunt of Wolverine and Thunderbird's mental and physical exhaustion. Jean finds the right psychic key to be able to telepathically assault the aliens. Essentially, she can find chinks in their mental defenses. Jean, while multitasking, shields the minds of approximately 8.5 billion people from a massive psychic attack that would have killed everyone in New York City had it not been for Jean's intervention. Jean can feel the emotions of everyone on Earth. Even Jean's own telekinesis is capable of restraining the Phoenix Force from going mad. Jean has shown to use her telekinesis in many ways, such as stopping Richter's heart for a moment, causing him to have a seizure. She was able to stop the blood flow to Deadpool's brain to knock him out with telekinesis. If pushed enough, Jean will resort to other diminishing methods, such as embarrassing her opponents by forcing them to literally throw up or poop their pants. She has used her telekinesis to disrupt the energy field of the cage with her TK that was holding the O4 prisoner. The field was made to be in the tune with the O4's cellular structure and feedback their powers on them, so Jean had to be very careful when she destroyed it, otherwise she could have disrupted her team's cellular structure accidentally with her TK. Jean can gather psychic energy from the two races of a planet. 2 cities are shown to have had energy gathered from, so we are limiting the feat to saying she gathered from 2 cities. This Jean has lost most of her telepathic powers during this time, and in fact, she didn't even have the Phoenix Force, which makes the feat pretty decent and pretty impressive in its own right. Jean Grey and Charles Xavier absorbs the rampant psychic energies from the dying Ant Shadow King. Even as a teenager, Jean's PSI drains the Supreme Intelligence's psionic energy, a being composed of 10 billion minds, and uses the energy to take out the Kree accusers. Teenage Jean absorbs the telepathic energy from inhabitants of the planet, Terrax, the Tamer, Galactus, and from the Phoenix Force itself to punch Galactus and knock him down. Jean's mental resistances was capable of holding off the Phoenix Force from controlling her. Even without the assistance of the Phoenix, Jean is able to recreate an entirely new body just by absorbing foes' psionic energy. Jean was able to use her telekinesis to undo a nanomachine's transmutation back into human form. Her telekinesis can also amp her physical attacks to damage a sea monster. This very same sea monster was literally beating the absolute fish rocks out of an amped Namor who was underwater. And lastly, Jean was able to swap with Nate Grey, merged Legion for a while, who tanked a serious lightning strike from Storm. Last but not least, let's talk about our blue furball, Beast. See what he brings to the table. So right off the bat, Beast himself has feats of him fighting Wolverine and being able to physically damage and overpower Wolverine at certain points. This very same Wolverine has a feat where he was able to tank a massive explosion, and this feat was calced around the mountain level ranges of attack potency, which is very impressive. Shoutouts to KKrimbus for calcing this as well, much appreciated. So easily from the scaling that I've given you guys from Wolverine and to Cyclops, you can get them easily around city. There's some mountain level stuff now. That's also an upgrade you can also apply to some of these street tiers, and Beast himself would scale to these ranges very easily. So things like large town level, these street tier-esque scaling and feats easily, they all scale to that. Now, moving on to speed, Beast easily scales to Wolverine. Of course, he can react to Wolverine and react to some of his other X-Men members. Wolverine himself, he can dodge Cyclops' optic blast, which was calced around the 2 times speed of light, aka FTL. So right there and there, Beast has some FTL reaction speed, and Beast himself was actually able to react to something on a nanosecond. Beast consistently has faster than light reaction speed. Very impressive. So anyway, that's going to wrap up Beast's stats. I'm going to go ahead and move on and talk about the rest of what he brings to the table. Before Beast became the blue furry mutant that we all know and love, Beast's former appearance was originally more human-like, with some mutant features such as having big hands and big feet. But despite those eccentric features, Beast's mutant powers bestow upon him superhuman strength, speed, reflexes, agility, and acrobatic prowess. He is an adept at performing complex acrobatic maneuvers. He can walk on his hands alone for hours. He has great dexterity with his hands and feet. He incorporates them both, such as catching Captain America's shield with his feet alone. And as for skill, Beast is known to be one of the best brawlers, as he's shown to use pressure points, and his skills are above the animal kingdom itself, which is absolutely impressive. Now, more on to Beast's transformation. Over the years, Beast has underwent different mutations, which make him more feral and increasing his overall abilities. In fact, this, in a way, is a great thing, as Beast's hearing is 10 times that of a normal human, and has enhanced sense of smell, which allows him to detect a goon who is hiding in ultraviolet rays, which make them virtually invisible to the naked eye. With this change of mutant physiology, he also comes with sharp claws. He's demonstrated dirty tactics with his claws, such as clawing off his opponent's eyeballs. And just like Wolverine, Beast can also switch and fight on pure instincts alone. Beast also has an accelerated healing factor, allowing him to heal from injuries, such as regenerating from bullet wounds instantly. Beast has some really good endurance feats, such as taking hits from a suppressed Hulk and taking a hit from Juggernaut, and also staying in the game after being blasted by electricity. Beast is very intellectual, as Beast reads a lot and knows a lot of subjects such as English, Shakespeare, Plato's theory, music, art, law, philosophy, etc. And Beast also has an amazing set of vocabulary. Beast is a great inventor and is always tinkering around with machinery to create things such as a noiseless popcorn bag opener. Lastly, when it comes to combat, Beast is quite smart. He was able to deduce a way to blind a hostile robot by destroying its antenna. In World War Hulk X-Men, Issue 2, all the X-Men do battle against Green Skull Hulk. Colossus in particular demonstrates he's able to damage this suppressed Green Skull Hulk. An interesting statement comes from Hulk, as he notes that Colossus would have been a decent opponent for Hulk in the past, mainly referring to his Savage Hulk state. In fact, we see Colossus physically damage Savage Hulk on another occasion. Colossus was able to intercept a punch from She-Hulk and casually threw her aside, and Colossus was able to knock out Wendigo, and Wendigo has power enough to rival that of the Hulk. In fact, Wendigo faced against She-Hulk and was able to rip her stomach open pretty clean. Now, Colossus's organic steel state comes with additional benefits. It grants super strength, durability. It gives him self-sustenance, as he does not require the need to eat or breathe, and it grants him more stamina in this form. Colossus has impressive endurance and durability feats, such as taking a punch from an amped Juggernaut. Colossus has taken blows from Gladiator back in the classic days, and Colossus has also endured a punch from an amped Asgardian Juggernaut. Pretty impressive. Lastly, believe it or not, Colossus is pretty skilled in combat. He was trained by Wolverine and Storm, and he's shown to implement skill in combat, especially against the Hulk. So that's going to round up the X-Men. I'm going to go ahead and talk about my thoughts on who I think wins more often than not, X-Men or Superman. Does he clear or does he not? Right off the bat, not going to waste any time. Superman against the X-Men as a whole, he's way too fast and way too powerful for them. Wolverine, starting off with him. Now, the biggest win con for Wolverine is his adamantium claws. Those things have really good durability negation. It can slice Thor and the likes of Hulk. Superman has no resistance against durability negation. If those adamantium claws do connect, Superman may be in trouble. However, Superman has pretty good regen. We've seen Superman being sliced up before and he's just fine. But I will bring that onto the table, as that is something that can definitely harm Superman. However, that's pretty much it. Superman overall is a dominant beast. He blitzes, takes out Wolverine. I don't think he will get like one shot, I guess like 10 shot, because Wolverine has insane endurance. Like, bro is taking punches from Hulk, and this dude is getting up within seconds, if not minutes, very easily. But I think incapacitation is a decent win con for Superman. If not, need be, he could lobotomize Wolverine. Superman's own, you know, his vision, he would know that Wolverine does have adamantium due to being able to see his actual exterior, you know, his x-ray vision, all those things. So he would have foreknowledge on what Wolverine's packing, and if he punches Wolverine, he's going to feel that adamantium. He's going to feel Wolverine's quite clunky. So I think Wolverine overall would just get dispatched very easily. There's just 3 strong win cons for Superman to dispatch of him: BFR, throwing him to the sun, lobotomy, and of course eventual incapacitation. Cyclops, even if Superman is holding back and Cyclops uses full power, let's entertain it, he goes for a full powered optic blast. It's very powerful. However, Superman's heat vision is just way above Cyclops' pay grade. Even if we highball Cyclops and use Wank, especially the time with Dormammu, I don't think that's going to be enough. Plus Superman is way too quick. In fact, he'd just fly up to Cyclops and incapacitate him too. So he would just try to immobilize Cyclops more than anything. So those are the 2 members that are very easily to dispatch. Same thing with Beast. There's not really a discussion for Beast. Beast is just way too slow. He doesn't have the AP, and he doesn't have any hacks or anything that he could use to bring to the table. So they get dispatched off very easily. Now, what about Rogue? What about Rogue's, you know, her mutant power to absorb? That could actually work. But Superman does have really good resistance against, you know, energy absorption and people trying to absorb his life force. He's dealt with things of that nature. He would honestly one-shot Rogue before she even got the chance to do it. And even if she did absorb some of his life force, she'd be already incapacitated to begin with. So she wouldn't be able to use the Kryptonian DNA and the powers that Superman has. It'd just be way too late. Storm, her weather manipulation is pretty much useless due to the fact that Superman, you know, he can just pretty much counteract the weather manip. Even if she tried to take out his breath, he'd just completely just fire back with his own Kryptonian powers. He'd just use heat vision. He'd like use ice breath. He'd counteract many of Storm's abilities. Her lightning won't touch him. In fact, if her lightning does tag Superman, he'd just absorb it due to the energy from it. So I just see him like blitzing in and just one-shotting Storm. Her weather manipulation isn't going to be very useful in this situation just due to Superman's resistances. So unfortunately for Storm, I see her getting taken out pretty quickly as well. As for Colossus, if Colossus tries to get into a fisticuffs with Superman, Colossus is getting turned into a tin can. He doesn't have the AP, and like as I mentioned before, yes, he's fought the Hulk, but even the Hulk holds back against Colossus. The Colossus just isn't in Hulk's pay grade in any way, shape or form. It's just sad to say, Colossus literally just gets sent flying into another state, if not just turned into complete scrap metal by Superman. Now, last but not least, Jean Grey. Jean Grey has some very nasty mind hacks. You could potentially argue it, you know, being up there with the Heraldteers and the Skyfallers and stuff due to the fact that she did mind hacks Nightmare. Superman himself is no stranger to mind hacks. He has really decent mind hacks resistances, so even if you try to tamper into his mind, due to the fact that he's faster and stronger, he just blitzed Jean before she can even get her mind hacks off, and he just one-shot her more often than not. Overall, Superman clears, I guess, like no diff, or maybe low diff, if we're being generous. He just stat stomps. He has the resistances to deal with their hexes. The mutant powers just aren't enough or efficient enough to deal with Superman. These things aren't new to Superman. He's dealt with similar things anyway. So the X-Men team aren't really bringing anything unique to the table, and they get pretty much knocked out more often than not. Now, as for the bonus round, what about the Phoenix Force? What if Jean had the Phoenix Force? Unfortunately for Superman, I've got to give it to the Phoenix Force. The Phoenix Force is just way too prominent, way too powerful for Superman. Yes, she wouldn't be able to kill Superman due to his Type 8 immortality, his story. He's just way too fundamental to the plot. She won't be able to kill him in any way, shape or form, but she would incapacitate Superman more often than not. And the Phoenix Force in cosmology just scales really high. Like, she's up there in DC, very high into the tier. So in the bonus round, I gotta give it to the Phoenix Force, but for the first round, Superman pretty much body slams a lot of the team. In fact, all of the team members. But that's my thoughts. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys enjoyed, please leave a like, comment down below, and of course subscribe for further content. It's been real. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.